Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1020 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Obviously, a few chapters ago, we called that Oda was setting up the individual battles of the Straw Hats that he'd sort of built up from around chapter 1000. Well, even though we've called that like recently, it's still, the overall feel of it kind of snuck up on me personally. It wasn't but, 5 chapters ago that Kinemon and Kiku seemingly died and we had Roof Piece, right? And then all of a sudden it's just bam. Now we're finishing up all of these battles that had been set up and we're finishing them off quickly. And I'm kind of left wondering, is this how the arc is going to play out, or is this misleading in some way? Basically what I'm saying, guys, is these are the climactic individual fights of the Straw Hat crew, right? Brook and Robin versus Black Maria, Jinbei versus Who's Who, Frankie versus Sasaki, and then Usopp and Nami sort of against Ulti. This feels like what would be the normal progression of most arcs. Once these battles conclude, these Straw Hats won't get different 1 vs 1 or 2 vs 1 opponents. And typically, immediately after these battles conclude, you would have the decisive fight of the arc. In this case, Luffy and or others against Kaido, excluding Big Mom entirely. But here, for whatever reason, the timing feels off. So I'd like to just take a moment to go look at other arcs, because I'd like to keep these arcs in reference. It doesn't have to be the same as every other arc. Keep that in mind. But just to get a sense of what should be the normal pacing of a One Piece arc. I think about Alabasta, right? Alabasta was probably a pretty much straightforward example of what seems normal to me, right? You have all the Straw Hats get their individual fights, and then you focus for the last 10 or 15 chapters of the arc on Luffy and Crocodile, pretty much. But to get a sense about how quickly we are running through these battles, like, I looked at one, for instance, Nami and Alabasta fighting against Miss Goldenfinger. That battle spanned pretty significantly over 4 chapters, right? Right now, Oda is trying to condense these Straw Hat fights into 1 or 2 chapters, as it appears to me, at least for characters not probably named Sanji or Zoro. So it creates this sense, this feeling for me about these battles. While I enjoyed Jinbei versus Who's Who, and I enjoyed Frankie versus Sasaki, and I enjoyed this chapter as well, it just feels like we're moving. That these battles aren't that significant. It gives me that impression, just based on the time spent. We'll come back to this in a moment. Let's focus now on Thriller Bark, because Thriller Bark has a little bit different structure. You obviously have focus on the Straw Hats and their individual fights before you have the climactic fight, but the climactic fight involved not just Luffy fighting against Moria and Oars, but the entire crew had another fight, essentially after their original opponents. I think that a lot of people feel like Wano could be similar to that, and there may be some foreshadowing of that from the anime, with the OP having a scene in which the Straw Hats, all of the Straw Hats, the crew, are gathered together against Kaido. Perhaps we will see that. The anime has proven to be somewhat of a spoiler. Oda's been slipping them notes. In this case, it fits a lot better. The fights in Thriller Bark with the crew span somewhere between 1 and 3 chapters, with Usopp being maybe like 2.5 chapters, close to 3, spread out a little bit over between chapters, and fights such as Chopper and Robin versus Hogback being about 1 chapter. Even Zoro versus Ryuma was maybe 1.5, which feels a lot more like what we have going on right here. And then immediately after all of these battles, you then have everybody against Oars. So you get the rapid succession of battles, conclusions to battles, and overall, they weren't hugely significant because the Straw Hats had something to do afterwards. I think that what we are seeing here right now is very comparable, so maybe, that's a conclusion that we can take away from this. Maybe that's what we're going to see afterwards. I'm not actually going to predict this, but I'm going to throw it out into the vacuum. I think that if you had asked people during Thriller Bark, it's hard to recall all the way back to then how I felt, but I personally probably would have thought that Zoro and Ryuma and Sanji versus Absalom would have been bigger fights than they actually turned out to be at the time. And so in Wano, we have Sanji versus Queen, or maybe Sanji and Zoro versus Queen, or Zoro versus King. These fights, which we haven't gotten into yet, but would seem like that would follow the pattern of sort of the direction Oda is going. Are these fights going to be shorter than we expect them to be? Particularly if Sanji and Zoro team up against Queen, I could imagine that Queen would be defeated by the two of them quickly. I could imagine that. Or on the other side of the coin, and this is kind of counter to everything that I've been saying here, Oda doesn't have to follow patterns and formulas if he doesn't want to. And so the thing about the Beast Pirates, the thing that draws them all together, is the fact that they are zone type fruit users. In many cases, strong zone types like ancient zones. Zones, the primary quality, it seems to me, is endurance. That they have a lot of HP and defense. We even saw, right, Ulti got up after an attack, a direct attack from Big Mom. And so who's to say, right, that all these fighters are even defeated? Is that sort of what Oda's going for here? Is this why the fights are so short? It seems like they've all lost, but then they haven't. That wouldn't be too surprising to me. There's so many directions this could go. But I appreciate everybody bearing with my rambling, but the main reason that I brought this up is, I've been conditioned to see these kinds of chapters that we've gotten over the last month or two, and then expect that afterwards we're going to have a conclusion to the arc, which would be, in most cases, 15 to 20 chapters focusing on the main battle. This is Wano, the arc is a bit longer, so maybe you've got 2 Yonko, but we could be, right now, like, setting up, as soon as these battles are done, maybe after Sanji and Zoro fight somebody, 30 chapters, and this arc could technically be over. Or at least onto its resolution, like what happens afterwards. Thinking here about Cypher Pole and the Marines, X-Drake, that sort of thing. So JB, you might ask, how exactly is it feasible? Or how do you see this arc ending in 30 chapters? What about Big Mom? Are seriously the Strats going to defeat both Big Mom and Kaido here in the last, in 30 chapters from now? Guys, my theory about this relates to the ongoing theory that I've had about this arc becoming the arc of the dead. The Fire Festival is a festival celebrating the dead. I think that the dead appear, and this chapter added even more to reaffirm my belief in this. But if you want the gist of this, essentially, if you really want to look into all of Wano, there's been crazy hints throughout that the dead is an important theme of the arc itself. At almost every opportunity you could possibly imagine, Oda throws in some mention or some reference to death. Early on in Wano, Law tried to convince us or Luffy that Kinemon had died. Luffy saw his gravestone. Kinemon appeared out of the building as a zombie. Luffy freaked out, and then it was just indigestion. And then we learned that it appeared as though the Scabbards had died 20 years ago. Obviously they hadn't, but they were transported to the future. That's what Wano believes, and it leads into Orochi's great fear that the dead would return back to life to haunt him. The Scabbards, who were dead, he thought that they were dead, would return as ghosts to defeat him. And it's interesting that a lot of the lore that Oda has decided to incorporate into Wano, or the culture of Wano that Oda has focused on, usually relates or could relate with the dead. For instance, Kokeshi dolls could represent the spirits of children who have died. Or we've had all sorts of lore about swords, how those swords were held by fighters who died on the battlefield, and that this battle currently taking place in Onigashima is a continuation of that battle. So by picking up their fallen comrades, their dead comrades' swords, it strengthens the allies. Another important cultural element of the people of Wano that Oda has decided to focus on is Sanachi, or throw away your names and wits. And essentially what this means, or what this is implied to mean, is that the cry encourages them to stop thinking and worrying about the danger they may be in, and just simply take action. It has to do with embracing death, which is why Kiku gets mad at Momonosuke for using the phrase, because he isn't supposed to embrace death like normal soldiers would. And this also relates to a scene we had in the middle of Wano with Ashura Doji, where there was a bunch of samurai who wanted to die in battle rather than die of starvation and hunger and disease. It was a really interesting scene. Basically, they were like, we can't wait for the return of the other scabbards in the Kozuki. We have to fight now while we still have the ability to fight. So they see it as important, and Oda felt like it was important to explain that they wanted to die in battle. Guys, I think that there's a lot of importance here in reading between the lines, sort of connecting all these various cultural elements and realize that there's a unifying theme. And this was all before we got to learn that the Fire Festival itself, which is when the battle is taking place, is a celebration of the dead. And just a few chapters ago, in chapter 1016, Oda panned to Otoko and Tenguyama Hitetsu in the capital as they're celebrating the Fire Festival. Isn't it bright and joyful here, Otoko? The Fire Festival is a time to mourn and celebrate those who have passed. That is why the fires are so high, to reach up to heaven. Toko says, I wonder if Daddy is watching right now. Tenguyama Hitetsu says, of course he is, my dear. Just look at how clear the sky is tonight. I'm certain that he is looking down at this very moment, watching over you and the fate of this country. I'm totally convinced that the dead are going to appear, at least as ghosts. They may not fight directly, they may fight directly, I'm not entirely sure. Someone like Yasu, I think Yasu is going to appear to Toko, and something, it'll resolve the last moment that Toko needed with her father. Even as earlier in the arc again, she runs to go meet her daddy at the execution. She's so worried. It's just like, it felt like it was missing that one scene of the daughter and father bonding before he left, before he passed. Again, in this chapter, we have a scene with Momonosuke where he's talking to Luffy, and he basically says, I saw Kinemon and Kiku die right before my eyes. They're dead. I'm totally convinced of that. They're dead, but they may appear again. I believe that Kinemon at least needs one final scene with Otsuru, his wife. They never got to meet. That has to happen. If Izo still lives, then I think Izo might need a final scene with Kiku. An interesting thing that we observed earlier was Oda's attempt to make us believe that Odin had returned on multiple occasions. Of course, it turned out not to be Odin, it was Kandro. But this creates an expectation within the reader that the next time that Odin appears, if he were to appear, we're automatically going to assume that it's not Odin, that it's some sort of trick, that Kandro is still alive, or something, even if it were to happen to be the real Odin, as a ghost or spirit. Oda has accomplished something else very similar to that again in this chapter with Black Maria's illusion abilities, where once again, just like Odin, the dead appeared before Robin's eyes. So if those dead people appeared again, Robin is going to immediately assume that they're not her real family, her real friends. It's some kind of lie. But it may not be. You might seriously have, I think this creates the expectation within me that it's not just going to be characters that are relevant to Wano that might appear during the Fire Festival. It could be Saul and Nico Olvia or Clover, which opens up a whole world of opportunity for every single member of the Straw Hats. Everybody has somebody important who died. As Tenguyama Hitetsu would say, everybody, all the Straw Hats, all the important characters, even Law, has somebody who would be watching over them from above during the Day of the Dead. And this is without mentioning Ace as well. There's all sorts of little clues that Oda has sort of left as possible foreshadowing that Ace is going to appear and impact this battle in some way. He essentially promised that he would. He never got to fulfill that promise, but he basically told Kaido, and when he punched the statue and melted its face, like as a warning, I'm coming back for you. Which would be really fitting if he appeared as a spirit or ghost and interacted in the battle in whatever way that it's possible for these things to do that. But anyway, I wanted to be thorough again because it's been several months since I really talked in depth about this. But the main thing that I want to get to, really, is how I think this might impact the duration of the arc to come. For the main thing for me, really, is how do we deal with Big Mom? That's like the big thing that hangs over my head. We could potentially see the Strats win their individual battles, and they all team up against Kaido, and it would be very similar to maybe the battle against Oars, and Luffy unlocks Gear 5th, or something happens, and it's feasible that maybe they win. But the thing that doesn't make any sense is Big Mom. Big Mom doesn't make any sense. So if you're trying to figure out how this arc ends, you have to figure out where Big Mom goes from here. I see a lot of people basically say that they think Big Mom is going to run away, which I hate. I hate that so much. There's got to be, if Big Mom leaves, there has to be a great reason, not a good reason, a great reason, or this arc will forever be stained in my mind in a negative way. As though Oda couldn't decide what to do with Big Mom, all the stakes surrounding her were fake, and then as soon as she could have played an important, pivotal role in stopping the Strats or otherwise doing something, she leaves. I would hate that. So maybe the easiest way to deal with Big Mom and progress her story is for the dead to appear, particularly the dead person who matters most to Big Mom, Mother Carmel. If Mother Carmel appears, and Big Mom discovers the truth of that, then that's how you could see Big Mom's story resolve here in Wano. Going back to Whole Cake Island and the Tea Party, the way that I understand the portrait of Mother Carmel is that Big Mom has it in her mind, deluded, that Mother Carmel is still alive because she does not know that she likely killed her. And so when the portrait of Mother Carmel, who represents Carmel, is broken, it sort of reminds Big Mom that the likelihood that Carmel is dead. When Big Mom realizes this, she freaks out because a lot of her dreams are tied to Mother Carmel still being alive. It's like while the picture was there whole, Big Mom could convince herself that Mother Carmel was still alive and was eventually going to come and see how awesome Big Mom had made the world, and the Tea Party is so nice, and her country is the paradise that Mother Carmel always wanted. When that portrait broke, it's like, oh yeah, Mother Carmel is dead. And when that happened, Big Mom freaked out. And that was the moment that Beige told us that Big Mom could take damage. That before this, she's basically invulnerable. As soon as she realizes that Mother Carmel is dead, when the portrait is simply knocked over, it's like Mother Carmel disappears from being present during the Tea Party. Big Mom breaks. So if Mother Carmel's spirit or ghost appeared during this, it would be profound for Big Mom, likely resulting in something very similar to the Tea Party, where at the very least, she's capable of sustaining damage, and being defeated likely will freak out and all sorts of other just craziness. Seriously, think about it for a moment. Mother Carmel's ghost appears, which essentially confirms to Big Mom that Mother Carmel has died. Mother Carmel, as it's her actual spirit, right? So she could communicate to Big Mom important information, like, for instance, I've seen you, Big Mom. I've seen the paradise that you've created, and it's wonderful. That could fulfill Big Mom's dreams. On the other hand, we know that Mother Carmel was not as Big Mom thought that she was. She was a Cypher Pull agent. She was a nasty woman. So maybe the true Carmel appears before Big Mom and reveals the truth to her, that she was killed by Big Mom, that she always hated her. Depending on what happens here, and I think it's likely to be the negative thing than the positive thing, insanity. And at that point, you would expect that her children would probably be here. You would think so. This could happen really fast. Big Mom likely loses her mind and then could potentially influence the battle on multiple fronts. So even if it looks like the Strats are going to lose, maybe Sanji and Zoro don't defeat Queen and King. Maybe all of the zones that we think were defeated in the succession of chapters actually get back up. They're not defeated. Like, for instance, Frankie basically shot his wad, right? There's no way that he could defeat Sasaki. After this, you create this moment where it's like, for sure, the alliance is about to fail. And then the dead appear. Then Big Mom goes haywire, and then all of a sudden, anything could happen. And this arc could resolve very quickly. At least up until the point to where maybe Kaido and Big Mom are defeated and Cypher Pole steps in. But anyway, I know that none of this is really directly related to the chapter at hand, but this is something I really wanted to talk about because it's been on my mind. I just want to make sense of like, where are we in the arc and how can we reach the finish line and what might that look like? The chapter itself started off with Kaido versus Yamato. We got Yamato's Devil Fruit, and basically Oda was like, you guys really need to stop speculating because you're not even close. I think that we predicted the Kirin, and did so pretty confidently at that, but it is actually the Makami, the mythical dog fruit. Looking this up, the Makami seems to represent ancient, now extinct wolves. And the thing that it reminds me of is the wolf goddess Moro from Studio Ghibli Princess Mononoke, which I think is probably a Makami. Its power, as far as I can gather, is the ability to see within the heart of man and judge a person good or evil, which is definitely shared with Yamato. I feel like Yamato, just kind of like Luffy, has a good sense for who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. It's also interesting that Makami translates directly, as far as I am aware, to Great Spirit. Makami are also regarded as having a strong power to protect people against evil, in particular against hardships caused by fire and robbery, which is very relevant, I think, to the battle in Onigashima. And might also inspired, I think it has an ice power, right? In the chapter, Yamato demonstrated that it seemed to be a counter to Kaido's blast breath. Something which went over my head the first time that I read the chapter, but upon reread stuck out to me, is this line between Kaido and Yamato. Kaido says, "It was a mistake to let a wannabe Odin like you eat the fruit. The Makami is Wano's guardian deity. Now it's your job to protect Wano for me." When I first read this, I don't know what I thought, but it's very clear that Kaido is the one who's saying this. So basically, the reason why Kaido wants Yamato to rule over Wano is because Yamato ate this fruit, which is like really weird. It almost gives Kaido a religious sort of element to him, like he believes that somebody who possesses this fruit needs to watch over Wano. I don't know, I just found that really strange. It never occurred to me that Kaido thought about the protection of Wano in any way. It also suggests to me that there may be a history between Wano and this devil fruit. How did Kaido come to possess the Makami devil fruit? Well, probably because it was a devil fruit that may have been native or existed within Wano for a period of time. This has the potential to be an incredible hidden gem in terms of speculation, right? So we've actually talked about something similar to this before with Enel's Goro Goro no Mi, the Lightning Logia Devil Fruit, which is sort of implied in some way. You can rationalize that the Sky People always had the Goro Goro no Mi from maybe even before they ascended from their moon to the blue planet. So there's like an association with the Devil Fruit with the people. And this is given that same sort of connotation, like the Makami is Wano's guardian deity. The one who possesses this fruit needs to be the guardian deity for Wano. Very similar to how the person with the Goro Goro no Mi should be the god of Skypiea. That's how I interpret this. So as like an example, during the Void Century, you have to wonder whether a Kozuki possessed the Makami devil fruit. Maybe Odin's father also possessed this fruit. That wouldn't surprise me. But I also want to point your attention to something else, right? Makami, we said, translates roughly to Great Spirit, and has a connotation of being the guardian deity of Wano, or a deity in general, right? And so we've talked about how one of the major themes of Wano relates to death, and Brook has died. And after visiting the other world, Brook came back with ice powers. We can also see that the Makami Devil Fruit grants Yamato, it appears, ice powers. I wonder if that's related in some way. I also thought that it was interesting that Kaido said Orochi may have been a tyrant, but he transformed this country into a giant weapons factory. You just have to take your rightful place as ruler and claim the fruits of their labor. The way that Kaido phrased this is just absurd, but because it's absurd and clearly intentionally so, it tells you a little bit about Kaido. Kaido says, well, Orochi may have been a tyrant, essentially saying that Orochi as a tyrant was bad, but he created the weapons factories on Wano's. So basically this translates as, Orochi was a bad person, he was a tyrant, but he did a good thing. He transformed Wano into a giant weapons factory, which I think, it lets you in a little bit into Kaido's mindset of, well, transforming this country, creating all these weapons factories is actually a good thing, Kaido believes. Basically, I think this is going to lead into that Kaido thinks that everyone should die. And it's not from a place of maybe anger or, he believes himself to be evil. I think that he seriously believes that everyone should die, and then that's a good thing. Which becomes an absolutely fascinating belief if you believe in the theory that the dead are going to come back to life, because that's where Kaido wants everybody to go. So there's a chance for that to be interesting. This reminds me a lot about the videos that I did talking about Buddhism. I am still not an expert about Buddhism, so I may say something wrong here, but just theoretically thinking about it, conceptually, right? The Buddhists believe in the paths of pain. There's different places that you can sort of be reborn into, and it's often considered that real life, living world is a place of suffering, and to escape the suffering you need to ascend and reach enlightenment, become a Buddha, thereby separating your soul from this cycle of rebirth. So it's interesting if Kaido religiously, almost, keep in mind that there seems to be some sort of connotation, maybe Kaido is religious, that he wants to destroy this path of suffering. By killing everybody, does he believe that he might be ending suffering? That would heavily relate to Buddhism. I don't know if that actually works at all but I'm throwing that out there. This could be a way in which Oda justifies Kaido's belief that everybody must die, and how Kaido could see himself as being the hero in the pursuit of that. Which is definitely the connotation that Kaido is given in this chapter. Like he says, oh, everyone dying is a good thing. Orochi may be a tyrant, he may be a bad person, but he transformed Wano into a weapons factory, and that's a good thing. But anyway, moving on to Robin and Brook, I'm curious how Black Maria knows about Nico, Olvia, and Clover, and Jaguar D. Sol. Like, obviously she has illusion powers, but how does she know what these people were like, or have access to Robin's memories? That's just a question that occurred to me. I don't know if Oda has an answer for that or not, but it's weird. Oda also builds up a kind of mystery as to why Robin and Brook weren't affected by Black Maria's illusions. Brook first tried to warn Robin about them, but Robin didn't need that warning. And then Robin says to Brook, looks like you weren't affected either. And Brook says, I was adrift in that mist for 50 years. Of course I dreamt of my friends surviving. It always hurt when I imagined their faces. And Robin's like, I'm just the same. So it's as if Oda is saying that the reason why the illusions don't affect Brook and Robin is because they've obsessed over their loved ones being dead. They see their faces and have essentially grown immune to the hope of them ever returning, which is really, really sad and would make all the more powerful if they did actually show up. Also, I didn't say this earlier, but Brook literally said it is as if this place is haunted. He then later goes on to call Black Maria's subordinates night demons and ghosts. I still find myself so confused about Black Maria and her crew's powers. Like, for instance, we saw Wanyudo in this chapter. That was a big focal point of the chapter. Wanyudo is setting the weapon, is setting everything on fire. But we find out that Wanyudo is a pug smile user. So the face of the guy was, the original person that was sort of put into the weapon. He ate a pug smile. But he seems to be creating fire. So is this an example of a previous devil fruit user who also ate a smile? Personally, that seems difficult to believe for me, because what kind of devil fruit would give him the ability to create fire? Obviously, he doesn't have Ace's fruit. I don't know what other devil fruit would do that? Or is this Black Maria's illusions applied in some tangible way? Does her devil fruit create real illusions? Because if that were to be true, that would be extremely overpowered, but I'm doubtful because it wasn't, the dead didn't come back to life, right? She merely transformed the appearance of her subordinates. So I tend to think that the weapon itself just creates fire, and she stuck a little creepy face in the middle of it to make it look like it was something greater than that, but it's literally just a fire weapon. It makes me wonder whether or not the spider that is attached to Black Maria, whether it's illusion or not. I mean, frankly, you can question anything that you see because her powers are clearly illusion-based. So, we said from the very beginning that Black Maria's spider does not look like other smile creatures. Either way, if Black Maria has eaten a smile, if the spider is real, then I think it's essentially confirmed at this point in time that she is both a smile user and a devil fruit user, because her illusion powers probably come from a devil fruit, a real one. Which wouldn't surprise me because that's one thing that we haven't seen. I'd be curious to find out if that's possible. The other thing that I wonder is whether the smile part of a smile user, the actual animal, whether that can eat a devil fruit and then the person use that animal's devil fruit. It also then becomes a question as to whether a smile user can consume 2 real devil fruits. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. But anyway, we finish off the scene with a setup of a 1v1 Robin versus Black Maria. We have a bit of conversation about Sanji, how Robin appreciates that Sanji will rely on her. That has to do with the fact that, Sanji doesn't want other people to be forced to take care of him. This relates back to going to Whole Cake Island by himself and trying to keep his problems away from other people. Oda's trying to reaffirm this and repeat this. It's one of those things that I do too. The more you repeat something, this is an actual thing, the more you repeat something, the more that it becomes believable. And I think Oda's trying that tactic because not everyone seems very receptive to the whole Sanji thing, even now. It makes sense, guys. It makes sense. Do you have to like it because it makes sense? No. But I definitely think that there's something powerful in a character like Sanji, who is relied upon so heavily by the crew. And the expectations of him are so high, right? Like Black Maria says, he has the second highest bounty. So when he taps out of a fight, it makes the entire Strat crew look bad. So it puts that pressure on Sanji to live up to others' expectations of him. And when he can, and I project my own sort of feelings onto this as well, if I couldn't, that would hurt me. So it then becomes powerful when he is able to do that and put aside his pride and allow someone else to do a thing that maybe others believe that he should be able to do, but he simply can't. So this then becomes an action that you can call strength, wherein he knows what he can and can't do, and doesn't care what others think. But I'm excited for Giant Robin. That seems like that's coming. And not only is Giant Robin gonna be a thing, but she's gonna be butt-ass naked. Which also, by the way, Black Maria. And finally, we have the last couple pages of the chapter, a scene with Luffy, Law's crew, Momonosuke, and Shinobu, and it basically takes us to the place that we thought a few chapters ago. It was too perfect that Momo would need to take Luffy, fly Luffy up to Onigashima, thereby conquering his fear in multiple ways. His fear of flying and his fear of Kaido. Momonosuke has been constantly running from danger. For the majority of the time that he's been in the story, now he's forced to run into danger. So there's symbolic importance to that. And I also want to say that Momonosuke has really been growing on me. Not that I really disliked Momonosuke that much when he was first introduced, but in general, he was just kind of a slimy kid it's easy for him to not be a character that you like, necessarily. But as he is right now, extremely coachable, he wants to do all these great things. He wants to be a great person and leader, and I'm really enjoying it. It's curious that this heavily contrasts with my perception of Shirahoshi Poseidon, who is a character that I think was very similar to Momonosuke when she was first introduced, but over the course of the arc, my opinion of her didn't ever really change, but with Momonosuke it has. I know a lot of people are against the idea that Momonosuke joins the crew in any capacity or travels with the crew to Laugh Tale, but I would say that as he's grown, I want this more, because I just enjoy him being in the story and his motivations. Similar to early Usopp, you really get the sense that everything that Momonosuke does is difficult for him, but he's still trying to do it, and that's powerful to me. I think that it's incredibly likely that we are soon to have a Kaido encounter with Momonosuke in dragon form, and I still think, it's been a while since we brought this up, but I still think that that is going to be important in some way. Remember, it's been heavily implied that Momonosuke's artificial fruit, Vegapunk created, is derived from Kaido, and Kaido was experimented on. So all this is going to come together. I don't know what the huge moment of payoff is actually going to be anymore. Previously I thought, well, Kaido might refuse to kill Momonosuke or try to take Momonosuke on as a subordinate or something, but I don't know if that makes sense anymore. But I don't know what the moment of payoff is going to be. I just know that I feel as though when Momonosuke shows up in dragon form in front of Kaido, something is going to happen. Oda has been very meticulous in preventing this from happening up until now. I don't think that's a coincidence. I really wish I could be more specific. But yeah, I guess just overall thoughts here before we end the first reaction review to 1020. I mean, it just appears as though Kaido is going to lose. So the raid ends in failure. It just does not seem like that's going to be the case. So in order to reach the emotions that I wanted, when we speculated this, and obviously Mord speculated this as well, to get to that emotion, Oda has to focus on not necessarily that they lost, but the people that they lost as they won. It's a Pyrrhic victory, and that could still have those same kinds of feels that I was hoping that the end of this arc could provide. But yeah, at this point, I'm totally convinced that Kaido is going to go down. Now, what happens after that with Cypher Pole, it could still be really, really heavy. Not to mention if the dead come back to life, which would be like a whoa moment in the story. But yeah, this was a really good chapter of One Piece. I enjoyed it quite a lot. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.